There comes a strange moment on the path of inner growth when the world you once knew no longer feels like home. The conversations that once entertained you now feel shallow. The habits you shared with others no longer resonate. The people you surrounded yourself with, friends, colleagues, even family, begin to feel like echoes from a different lifetime. It's not that anything dramatic happened. No conflict, no betrayal, no sudden break. It's simply that you have changed. Your mind has stretched, your awareness has expanded, and you suddenly find yourself standing in a room where the furniture hasn't moved, but you have outgrown the space. Alan Watts often spoke about this inner shift. He said that spiritual growth is not the addition of new layers, but the peeling away of illusions. The illusions we inherited from our culture, our upbringing, and the smallness of our earlier selves. When you strip these away, you see life with new eyes. But with new eyes comes a new solitude, because now you're no longer satisfied with small talk. You crave depth, conversations that mean something, relationships that awaken you, experiences that help you grow rather than numb you. The world, however, is full of people who fear depth, who cling to the familiar, who are threatened by anyone who shifts outside the lines. And so, growth becomes lonely, not because you are alone, but because you are redefining what together means. There is a peculiar danger in this stage. You look around and realize that people you once felt close to no longer understand you. Their concerns feel distant. Their dramas feel unnecessary. Their priorities feel foreign. And without wanting to, you begin to drift. Not in anger, not in superiority, but in quiet inevitability. This is the paradox of inner evolution. The more you understand yourself, the fewer people you feel understood by. Watts warned that this moment can feel destabilizing. It can feel like losing your world. You are shedding old skins, but new skins have not yet formed. You're stepping out of a story, but the next chapter hasn't begun. You may start to wonder, is something wrong with me? Why do I feel disconnected from everyone? Why can't I go back to how things used to be? But here is the truth. You're not breaking. You're breaking through. You are not losing people. You are losing versions of yourself that no longer fit. Growth always requires letting go, not because you must abandon the world, but because you must first outgrow the world you were conditioned to live in before you can step into the one you were meant for. Loneliness is not a punishment. It is the bridge between who you were and who you are becoming. And on the other side of that bridge, a new kind of connection awaits, one built on truth, not habit, on resonance, not convenience, on awareness, not comfort. But before we reach that, we must understand why we outgrow people and what this transformation truly means. Outgrowing people is not an act of arrogance. It is not a judgment of their worth. It is simply what happens when your internal landscape expands beyond the borders of the life you were once living. And perhaps the most surprising thing is this: you rarely notice it while it's happening. Growth doesn't arrive with trumpets. It arrives quietly, like dawn. You begin to see things you once overlooked. You start questioning beliefs you once accepted. You stop chasing the things everyone else seems to chase. You no longer feel the same satisfaction in gossip, drama, or meaningless repetition. Something inside you has shifted, not radically, but irrevocably. Alan Watts often described human beings as processes, not objects. We are always unfolding, always becoming, like a flame that never holds a single shape. But most people freeze themselves into identities because it feels safe to stay the same. They cling to what they know, even if it limits them, because familiarity feels like security. When you begin to grow, you break this pattern. Your values change first, subtly, then unmistakably. Where you once sought approval, you now seek authenticity. Where you once chased pleasure, you now seek meaning. Where you once wanted to fit in, you now want to feel alive. And this shift affects everything. Your conversations become deeper, your inner silence becomes richer, your intuition sharpens. Your tolerance for noise, both external and internal, decreases. Things that once thrilled you now drain you. Things that once annoyed you no longer matter. This is how growth reveals itself. But as you rise into this new space, something else becomes clear. Not everyone comes with you. Some people will remain where they are, not because they're wrong, but because they're comfortable. They may be living inside stories they are not ready to question. They may not want to confront their own shadows, their own contradictions, their own fears. Growth requires honesty, and many people still hide from themselves. Outgrowing people is a byproduct of waking up. Watts often said that once you taste awareness, you cannot go back to sleep. Once you see your own patterns, you cannot unsee them. Once you realize that your life was shaped by conditioning, you cannot pretend the conditioning is your truth. Suddenly, the people who are part of your old patterns no longer feel aligned. You notice how many relationships were built on mutual avoidance, mutual distraction, mutual wounds, mutual comfort. And when you begin to heal, those dynamics start to crumble. It's not that you feel better than others. That's just another ego trap. It's simply that you can no longer shrink yourself to match the version of you that existed in their world. Growth exposes the invisible contracts we made with others. I will stay small so you feel comfortable. I will stay predictable so you don't feel insecure. I will stay the same so nothing has to change. But as the real you emerges, those contracts break, not by force, but by necessity. And so you drift, not because you're pushing people away, but because you are no longer anchored to what once held you. This is how outgrowing begins, quietly, naturally, the way a tree grows out of its pot. Not because it hates the pot, but because its roots finally understand they were meant for earth, not clay. When you begin to grow beyond the familiar version of yourself, the world around you doesn't always celebrate. In fact, one of the most painful realizations is that your transformation often creates discomfort in others long before it brings clarity to you. Not because they wish you harm, but because your evolution forces them to confront what they have avoided in themselves. Human beings build invisible agreements with each other. Agreements about how we behave, how we think, how we respond, what we believe, and even what version of ourselves we are allowed to be. When you break those agreements, even silently, even by simply becoming more aware, others feel the shift. Some people respond with confusion. They sense that something in you is different, but they cannot name it. So they may ask, "Are you okay? What's going on with you?" Or "You've changed," as if change were an accusation. Others respond with irritation. Your calm threatens their chaos. Your clarity exposes their confusion. Your refusal to engage in old dramas makes them feel as if you're rejecting them personally, when in truth you are simply outgrowing your old patterns. There are those who will try to pull you back, not because they want to hurt you, but because losing the old version of you means losing the comfort of familiarity. People build their identity partly around the people they know. When you change, their sense of self feels unstable. So they might say things like, "You're not the same anymore. You're acting strange. You're different lately. You're distant. Remember who you used to be." But what they really mean is, "Please don't grow in a direction where I can't follow. Please don't evolve into someone who makes me question myself." Alan Watts often said that people don't fear the unknown. They fear the loss of the known. Your growth threatens the known version of you that others depend on. Your silence, your newfound depth, your shift in values, all of this forces people to confront their own stagnation. And some will resist. Some will pull away, not because you push them, but because your growth highlights everything they've chosen not to face. Others will project their fears onto you. They may call you selfish, cold, arrogant, or detached, not realizing that what they interpret as distance is actually your evolution into a more authentic form. And then there are those who will simply disappear. When you stop participating in their emotional patterns, their gossip, their distractions, they feel unanchored. You no longer feed the cycle they relied on, so they fade from your life, not with a fight, but with silence. But there is another reaction too, a rare, beautiful one. Some people will be inspired by your transformation. They will sense the clarity in you, the peace, the groundedness, and they will feel something awaken inside themselves. These are the people who are aligned with your path, not because they are the same, but because they are also growing. Watt said something powerful about this. When you become the kind of person who is no longer afraid to change, you give others permission to change as well. This is the unexpected gift of outgrowing. Those who are meant for your next chapter will rise to meet you. Those who are not will remain behind, trapped in their old stories. Neither reaction is wrong. Neither reaction is your responsibility. Your only responsibility is to follow the movement of your own becoming, to grow where life calls you, to shed what no longer fits, and to trust that those who truly belong in your world will not be threatened by your evolution. As you grow, people will react in all kinds of ways, but their reactions are reflections of their inner world, not yours. Your task is not to shrink so others feel comfortable, but to continue expanding into the person you were always meant to become. There is a subtle danger hidden inside the experience of outgrowing others, a danger far more corrosive than loneliness itself. It is the illusion that because you have grown, you are now above those around you. This belief doesn't arrive loudly. It creeps in quietly, disguised as clarity, disguised as insight, disguised as spiritual maturity. Alan Watts warned often about the spiritual ego, the part of the mind that takes genuine growth and turns it into a badge of superiority. It whispers, "You see something others don't. You're more awake than they are. You've evolved beyond them." This is the trap, because the moment you believe you are above others, you have simply built a new ego, one even stronger and more deceptive than the old one. It feels noble, it feels enlightened, but it is still separation. It is still the illusion of me against the world, simply wrapped in spiritual language. What began as inner growth quietly becomes isolation. You withdraw, you stop relating, you stop listening, you stop engaging with life because you now see yourself as someone who doesn't belong among ordinary people. This is not wisdom, it is loneliness wearing a mask. Watt said, "When you think you have reached a higher level, you have only fallen into a deeper illusion. True growth doesn't make you feel above others. It makes you feel more connected to them. Not because they think like you, but because you finally see the shared human struggle beneath all the masks. The danger of outgrowing others is not that you will lose people. That is inevitable. The real danger is that you will lose humility." There are two common traps on this path. Trap 1, believing you're the only one who changed. It's easy to assume others are stuck, asleep, or stagnant. But people grow in ways we don't always see. Some grow inwardly, quietly, invisibly. Others grow through pain they never speak about. To assume you are the only one evolving is to fall back into the illusion that growth is a competition. Trap 2, using growth as an escape. Instead of facing loneliness, disappointment, or emotional wounds, some people hide behind spiritual concepts. They say, "I'm beyond relationships," or "I've outgrown everyone," when in reality they're afraid to be vulnerable. Spirituality becomes a wall instead of a bridge. That is the greatest danger, to confuse emotional withdrawal with enlightenment, to confuse numbness with peace, to confuse avoidance with wisdom. Watts often reminded us that the point of spiritual understanding is not to escape the world, but to engage with it more authentically. If your growth makes you cold, you're not growing, you're armoring. If your clarity makes you judgmental, you're not awakening, you're inflating. If your awareness isolates you, you're not expanding, you're contracting. Real growth softens you, it opens you, it makes you more human, not less. The paradox is this: as you outgrow certain people, you must be careful not to shrink your heart. You can move forward without closing the door. You can evolve without looking down. You can rise without refusing to reach back. Because if you grow into someone who sees everyone else as small, you have not grown. You have only replaced one illusion with another. True maturity lies in recognizing that your path is only one path among many, and real spiritual insight dissolves superiority when it does not create it. Once you begin to outgrow the people around you, the question becomes, how do you continue moving forward without falling into isolation, bitterness, or superiority? This is where true spiritual maturity begins, not in waking up, but in learning how to walk awake among those who are still sleeping. Alan Watts often said that growth is not about becoming special, but about becoming more natural. A tree does not apologize for growing taller, nor does it boast about its height. It simply grows, quietly, effortlessly, because that is its nature. Your task is the same. The first step is humility, not the false humility of putting yourself down, but the grounded humility of knowing that you, like everyone else, are still learning. Growth doesn't make you superior. It simply makes you more aware of how much more there is to understand. The second step is compassion. When you realize how difficult your own process of awakening has been, you begin to see others with softer eyes. You understand why people cling to their habits, why they avoid growth, why they fear change. Instead of judging them, you feel empathy, because you've been there too. The third step is releasing old connections without resentment. You don't have to cut people out violently. You don't need dramatic goodbyes. You simply allow distance to form where it naturally forms. No anger, no guilt, just acceptance. Some relationships fade, some transform, some return later in new form. This is the natural ebb and flow of life. The fourth step is finding your own rhythm, not forcing yourself into isolation, but also not forcing yourself into old spaces that no longer fit. You learn to enjoy your solitude without fearing it, and to welcome connection without clinging to it. Finally, the fifth step is trust. Trusting that the people who align with your next chapter will enter your life without you needing to chase them. Your growth will naturally attract those who resonate with your frequency. Watts once said, "You don't need to draw people to you. You need only to be yourself, and the right ones will find you." Walking forward without arrogance means walking lightly, allowing growth to change you but not harden you, letting wisdom deepen you but not isolate you, keeping your heart open even as you rise beyond the familiar. This is how you move forward gracefully, not by leaving others behind with pride, but by stepping into your next chapter with peace. There comes a moment on every inner journey when you realize something simple yet liberating. You don't have to remain in the places where your soul no longer fits. Outgrowing people, environments, and versions of yourself is not a betrayal. It is the natural movement of life. Alan Watts often compared personal growth to the shedding of a snake's skin. The skin is not bad. It protected you once. It served a purpose. But eventually it becomes too tight, too limiting, too small for who you are becoming. If you refuse to shed it, you suffer. If you let it fall away, you grow. The same is true for the relationships and identities you leave behind. Outgrowing people does not mean you no longer care for them. It simply means your path is taking you somewhere they are not ready to go. And that is okay. Not everyone you love is meant to walk every step of the journey with you. Some people are chapters, not lifetimes. The danger is believing that loneliness means you're going the wrong way. But often, loneliness is the space before the new connections appear. It is the quiet clearing where old energies fade and new ones begin to gather. Watts would say, to understand change is to understand that life moves in waves. Some carry you toward people, and some carry you away. When you stop resisting this movement, you discover something beautiful. Life is not shrinking, it is expanding. Your path is not narrowing, it is opening. Your world is not becoming smaller, it is deepening. And the people who resonate with who you are becoming will appear naturally, not because you chased them, not because you begged for understanding, but because growth recognizes growth. Letting go of what no longer aligns is not an act of abandonment. It is an act of faith. Faith that your evolution has a purpose, faith that new chapters await, faith that you are not meant to stay confined in a version of yourself you have already surpassed. You don't owe anyone the sacrifice of your becoming. You don't have to dim your light to keep others comfortable. You don't have to pretend to be who you once were. Real growth is a gentle surrender. A willingness to move with the current rather than cling to the shore. A trust that where life is taking you is exactly where you are meant to be. You are not leaving people behind. You are simply continuing the journey they chose not to join. And when you walk forward with an open heart, you eventually discover that the loneliness of outgrowing was never a dead end. It was a doorway into a life, a peace, and a version of yourself that you were always destined to meet.